A very good morning to one and all who are present over here. I, Shaili Sinha, Student Manager, Balaji Institute of International Business, feels immense pleasure in introducing amongst us Mr. Jag Mohan Bhanver, CEO, People First India Limited.
And the guy who was responsible for doing it, among many other people, was Larry Page himself. So he started out with the dream, which was, let's download the internet. And he realized there wasn't too much stuff on the internet to download, because the way search used to happen back in 1998 was very different. But then you can always pick up some book on Google and you can read that. So we're not going to spend too much time on that. But the point I'm making is, the guy had a dream. He set some smart goals for himself, went ahead and achieved it. You know, 300 years back, if somebody had said, let's go on the moon, somebody would have asked him how much he had the previous night. But somebody dreamed and said, let's go to the moon. Why can't we go to the moon? Happened. So some smart guy said, you know, things always happen twice. First, they happen in your mind. That's when you dream. And then they happen in the real world outside, because that's when you set goals. Planning, self-evaluation, and then, you know, you go ahead and achieve that. So dreams are pretty important. Okay, the way I have actually structured this session is that I've not structured it at all, right? Like to actually do this more as a discussion. So I thought when I was sitting there that there were a lot of good news that I'd like to share with you, and some bad news as well. Which one would you want me to share first? Which one? You guys are pessimists. Good news first. Okay. So let's see. You guys must be doing a lot of reading, I guess, so you could probably help me out here. Ma'am, what's your name? Sorry? Tanushri. Tanushri is an unlucky victim of sitting here in the second row. We can't catch hold of her. What's the GDP? Yeah, I know it's gross domestic product. Said, how much? What's the growth? 7.3? Okay, fine. So the good news is that it's above 7. Better news is we left China behind in the first quarter of 2015. Did I ask you to clap? The moment I say China and you start clapping, but that's good. Let's have a bigger clap. The bad news is that I don't know if it's sustainable. WPI, wholesale price index, is about minus 4 point something, minus 4.5, I guess. Doesn't augur too well. CPI is struggling at about 3.5, 3.67 or something. Doesn't augur well. So that's the bad news there. Good news. India's demographic dividend is growing. I see some blank faces here. Let me figure out which is the blankest face here right now. What's your name? Megha? Okay, Megha, I just caught you because you were looking smaller than the rest, not because you were looking blank, okay? Do you know what demographic dividend is? You do? Wow, let's have a big hand for her. Because in the last 5 sessions I've had with senior corporate executives, they didn't know what it was. All right, Megha.
Dividing the demography according to some segments. So I guess that is democratic dividend.
And I'll help her out and expand on that. So, you know, when I say the demographic dividend is growing for India, look at age groups. Age groups. So today, we are at a place where 605 million Indians are under the age of 25. 25. Now see what this means. By 2020, the average age of India will be 29. Which means some of you guys might actually be older than the average Indian. Jesus, that's horrible. Okay? But that's good. So, average age 29. Do you know what will the average age in US be in 2020? 40. Japan 47. Europe about 48, 49. What is that telling you? It's telling you that by 2020, there will be 116 million people in India who are going to be working, compared to 94 million people in China who are going to be working. That's a distinct advantage. More people working, more productivity, more money coming in, right? Good stuff. Now let's make it better. A few years down the line, the workable population in most of the industrialized nations is going to be negative. It's actually going to be declining, I mean. In India, it would have grown by 32%. Yeah, you can always clap. Not that I have anything to do with it, but yeah, it's a positive sign. So that's the good news. The demographic dividend is growing. What's the bad news? There'll be those many more people competing for jobs with you. So if you need to get ahead, you'll need to be doing much better than those guys are going to be doing. And that's where sessions like what Mr. Thiru just did and Anil's going to do are really going to help you. Next, there was a time when corporates, if we had to hire people, we would go and hire them from metros or from, you know, mini metros. Today with technology, there is huge access to resources in smaller cities and towns. So you have online assessments, asynchronous interviews, all that stuff is happening. That's the good news. People in smaller towns get accessed. What's the bad news? I like these guys, yeah. So more competition again. And you know, corporates are looking at some of these smaller towns because they're saying there is more employee stickiness from there, which means they are more loyal. So guess who they're going to prefer? Kids from smaller towns. More competition. So you need to be 5 times better than the guys coming in from there if you want to make a difference. Let's give you another good news. 90% of hiring today is happening through social media. That's a good news. We spend a lot of time there, I guess. So what's the bad news? Some of the stuff potential hirers are going to see on social media is not going to make them want to hire people. So you need to spruce up your digital presence. By all means, enjoy Facebook and everything else, but also be present in places that matter, your LinkedIns and other professional sites. And make sure the information that you are putting up on those sites is meaningful information, is not information that can make people perceive you negatively. Because that's where the first impressions are driven. You could either get a job offer through the web, or even if somebody was deciding to give you an offer but decided, okay, let's just go online and check this guy or the lady out, you might just not get that job again. So it could work both ways. Good news. 375 million internet users, active users are close to about 243. The bad news? Hell, there isn't any bad news there. Everything doesn't have to have bad news. That's good news. That means you can use the social circle more for networking, right? Last good news. Today, people like Mr. Thiru and Anil have a lot of data on employability, which we didn't have earlier. The bad news. 75% of people in small towns are not employable. And 55% of graduates from metro cities are unemployable. So what we are really looking at, gentlemen, ladies, is in the kind of city that we are present in, almost 55% people are unemployable. Do you want to be part of that 55%? Obviously. But if you don't want to be part of that, then you need to start making some change now. And after having interviewed crazy tons of people, I can tell you it will all boil down to three things: the knowledge that you demonstrate, the skills that you exhibit, and the attitude that you display to people. We call it knowledge, skills, attitude. Knowledge means if I want to hire you, I'd like to see somewhere that you are smarter than I am, or at least more, smarter than most of the other people you're going to be working with. Otherwise, there's no point hiring you. So that level of knowledge needs to be there. So you may not have technical knowledge, which that job requires, but what about other knowledge? Tomorrow, if I'm the CEO of the company, you're traveling in a car from point A to point B with me. It could be a hell of an opportunity for you because you could impress the hell out of me. Or it could be a pain where it's really going to be a pain. Because 2 hours you're sitting with me and you're squirming and you're saying, what do I discuss with this guy? A lot of people today do not read as much as they should. So if one thing I could recommend more than anything else is, I'd say start reading now. Most business 42 years old when he became CEO of Google. Again, the third CEO. Eric Schmidt, Larry Page, Sundar, right? The thing that's really helped Sundar go is not his intellect. There are a lot of IITians there and a lot of Wharton guys. What really got him there is the skill with people. He's a people guy. You know Android. You have Android on phones. You know the guy who invented Android? There's a guy called Andy Rubin. Andy Rubin was heading Android for Google because Google acquired Android. And Andy was one of the senior most guys, like after Larry Page and Sergey, the founders. Andy should have been CEO. But Andy is not CEO. Andy was removed from the head of Android, and guess who that job was given to? Sundar Pichai. Why? Because Andy was running Android like his baby, while Google was being run as a separate company. And Google wanted somebody who could integrate these two businesses together. That guy had to be a people guy. That was Sundar Pichai. So today, Sundar is where he is, not because the degrees that he has come from the IIT or wherever they come from. He is where he is mostly because he's a people guy. Nikesh Arora, the third highest paid man in the world, 840 crores odd. But that's not important. What's important is why he is where he is. That guy did not do a sales program, by the way. He's not a sales guy, he's a tech guy. But he's so good with people that he goes around doing crazy deals with people. He was heading business services for Google. Now he's deputy chairman and president for SoftBank. Again, people skills. It's how he talks to people. So you want to ask yourself, when you go back today, are my people skills where they should be? If they are not, what can I do to improve them? Start taking courses around that. Start talking to trainers who come here to teach you more on people skills. Challenge them, question them. Go online, see what you can learn on people skills and communication. And then the final part is what we call the attitude. You know, I was just reading some notes that had been sent to me a few days back, and somebody sent me a note with a quotation saying, "Nothing in this world can stop a man from achieving his goals if he has the right attitude. And no one in this world can help a guy achieve his goals if he has the wrong attitude." So you want to decide what attitude you want to step in with. Is it the attitude that says, okay, kick me, dump me, throw me down, whatever you're going to do, I'm going to bounce back. I'm going to get back, and I'm going to do great? Or is it that, okay, I'm down and I'm shattered? Is the attitude going to be that there are 1,000 people in Balaji, I'm going to be the guy who aces it, I'm going to be the numero uno? Or is it going to be, well, I don't know, man. There's some guys who are just too good. What attitude are you going to enter the corporate world with will decide how well you do or you don't. And nobody, I repeat, nobody can build that attitude for you. That attitude has to be built internally from you. No knowledge and skills is going to help you achieve great heights if the attitude is not what it ought to be. And you are the maker of that attitude. So if I were to summarize, I would say, build knowledge, read a lot, take courses, try and finish them, learn something new every day. Skills, build communication, build interpersonal skills, people skills. Attitude, nothing is too tough to do. If you go with that attitude, you will do tough things and you will do them really well. And I think that's it. That should be good enough. Best of luck. Thank you. I didn't tell you how much I like the way you guys clap. All right. If there are any questions, we can take them right now. I may not be able to answer all of them, but if you have, you're welcome to throw them at me. Any kind of questions. Nobody's going to bite you here, guys. Don't worry about that.
Good morning, sir. Sir, I'm Shruti Taparia. My question to you is, we talked about demographic dividend of India. Will India be ready by 2020 to support its demographic dividend?
That's a very good question, very cogent question. Shruti, is it?
Yeah.
Shruti, most things in life are like a double-edged sword, right? Like even marriage is a double-edged sword. You trust people, respect people, care for people, and things will be good. You don't do that, and it can be the worst thing in life. Demographic dividend is a great opportunity for India. But the reason it can actually mess us up could be, one, if we are unable to generate the kind of employment which those youngsters are going to require. If we are not able to do that, there will be anarchy and chaos. Okay? So one is generation of jobs. Two, if we cannot generate jobs, can we create entrepreneurship opportunities for people? I see the climate being helpful and supportive towards getting into entrepreneurship ventures, but whether it will be to the extent that it can absorb that kind of force, we don't know. I think a lot more vocational training needs to go in, and governments are trying to do that at all levels. If that happens, we are safe. So right now, it's a bit of a mixed bag. Anything else? So Mr. Thiru is saying, can you comment more on bouncing back? Okay, let's take a few anecdotes here. One anecdote, actually. So when I was 7 years old, I was in the second standard, and I'm told I used to be the topper in class, which is not talking much. Second standard, a lot of people top. Third standard, I was in hospital. I had brain tumor. This was a time we're talking about almost 36 years, 37 years back, when to get one CT scan done, you had to wait for almost a year in institutions. My father was in the army. And he had been enrolled for a PhD program in Ohio State University, US. We had sold off everything in India. 5 years, the government of India had said, okay, sabbatical, go and do your PhD from Ohio, come back, and you know, all of that. So everything was done. 2 days before we are going, I get my epileptic seizure, and I realize, or rather my father realizes, that the guy's got brain tumor. It was a pretty scary thing 37 years back. So the doctor said that, look, we aren't very certain what will happen. There's a 10% chance. What we can do is we can do surgery, but if we do surgery, it's complicated, and we don't know whether it's going to work out or not. So we decided to do with this the tougher way. So they said, let's give a lot of medication. So I remember in those days, they used to give a medication called Tegretol, which is 1200 mg I was taking. 100 mg is equivalent to 1 compose. So it's like taking 12 composes in a day. And you're a pretty young kid. So I used to be zonked out most of the time. So that had its issues. I couldn't walk properly because, you know, so much of drug in your system, you're wonky, the mind doesn't work, you're like a zombie. The school said you can take him off for a year, it's fine. Relatives, you know, are very lovely people, but at times they can be very cruel people as well. So you would have comments from there. So I remember one relative said, I was 9 years old by then, and I remember saying, iske liye ek dukaan khol dena, you know, and he can sit over there, it's fine. And my father said, yeah, we will do it if it's required, but, you know, I think he'll make it on his own, don't worry. So it was not a very, let's say, it's not something that you dance with joy for. It was a bad time. But that taught me one thing, and that was that, well, you know, I saw my parents. And parents don't realize that their children are listening to them when you think they're sleeping. That's something you want to keep in mind later. So I used to hear them talk a lot, and I think I grew up by the time I was 10 or 11 years old, because there was a lot of shit happening around you, and you grow up with all that happening around you. And I realized that if my parents could handle their son going through this problem, then I could handle it too. And I think that taught me one thing, that irrespective of how much life throws at you, you still have the ability to stand up there and say, I can handle it, guys. And I think that's the attitude that's really worked. So I left banking in 2004. Going was good. I was one of the youngest VPs in banking. After MBA, within 4.5 years, I had become vice president, which was great. I left banking. I got bankrupted within the first year and a half of leaving HSBC. It was just before we connected the first time, Anil, when you were in Kotak. We bounced back. We got bankrupted again. We bounced back yet again. Set up the Indian Institute of Finance and Management, which is the largest private sector banking certification company in India. Built a fairly large business around the education side, Framebox Animation, various companies there. And then we screwed up again. And we bounced back. So life's going to keep doing that to you. The thing is, are you going to bounce back?
Good morning, sir. Myself, Shivangi Shrivastava. I'm from SBS Finance. So we know that you have a passion for writing. So my question to you is that after writing books like Think Your Ways to Millions and a book on Satyam Nadella and various other books, how did you get the idea of writing the book on Krishna, the curse of Brahma?
Sure. So, you know, my name is Jag Mohan, and that's a very fortunate and unfortunate name. Fortunate, it's a very revered name. Unfortunate because right from the time you're born, everybody starts talking to you with that. So I remember when I was growing up, my brother would be going out with women, nobody would say anything. I would go out and suddenly it was about Krishna and gopis, right? Just because your name is Jag Mohan. So anyway, by the time I moved out of HSBC, I had already decided that I'm going to take a sabbatical. I hadn't planned to work. It was supposed to be chutti time for me. I was very interested in Krishna. I come natively from Punjab, but I've spent all my life in UP. Krishna is very, very popular in UP and Gujarat. So I started researching about Krishna, and I realized the more I researched, all the stories that we had been told since birth were actually not all there. So there was a lot more than that. So for instance, nobody knows the prequel to Krishna's birth, right? That itself took me 3-4 years. Very difficult to comment what people should do or not. I think the main problem today is because people comment on what people should do. I feel that if individuals can decide to be a-religious and more spiritual, and a little more non-reactive. You know, we react a lot. Like I come from Punjab. Tomorrow if somebody says, oh, Golden Temple this, you know, the first thing people from Punjab would be, how did you say that? So it's so easy to react. And everybody does that. So I'm saying, if we could be a little less reactive, and बचपन से बोलते आए ना हमें हमारे philosophers क्या बोलते थे इंडिया में? Accept it more. बुद्धा बोलते थे यार आपने गाली दे दी मैंने accept नहीं किया तो वो तो लगी नहीं, right? So ये स्कूल में पढ़ लेते हैं हम लेकिन जब बाहर जाते हैं we somehow forget this. So I'm saying a little less, little more accepting, little more tolerant, less reactive, more spiritual, less religious. Things should be fine, but it's not easy. All right. So we can have more questions outside, offline. I'm here. Be happy to talk to you. I think there is steep land and we may otherwise go beyond the time limit. Thank you very much. Been a pleasure.